Hello and welcome. My name is Patrik Bergman, and I thank you for joining this comprehensive exploration of Fyodor Dostoevsky's monumental work, The Brothers Karamazov. This analysis promises to guide you through one of the most profound novels ever written, an intricate tapestry interlaced with philosophical inquiries, moral dilemmas, and an in-depth study of the human condition. As we delve into this work, we will reflect on the timeless questions and truths that Dostoevsky skillfully presents, enriching our comprehension of what it means to be human. Together we will ponder, explore, and perhaps even find answers to some of life's most profound questions. I invite you to engage deeply with this masterful text, for The Brothers Karamazov is not merely a story to be read, but a philosophical experience to be lived. Before we dive in, let's look at the epigraph that opens the book. The whole novel starts with what is called the epigraph. It is vital that you understand this, since Dostoevsky's use of a biblical epigraph in The Brothers Karamazov symbolizes sacrifice and transformation, setting a thematic tone for the character's spiritual journey and extending a universal message about the human condition. The epigraph is a Bible quote and reads, "Verily, verily, I say unto you, except a corn of wheat fall into the ground and die, it abideth alone. But if it die, it bringeth forth much fruit." And this is from John 12:24. Dostoevsky's choice of this biblical epigraph sets the philosophical tone for The Brothers Karamazov, inviting readers to ponder sacrifice, transformation, and spiritual rebirth. This metaphor of the grain's sacrifice represents the necessity of self-surrender and the relinquishment of the ego. Just leave it behind. Just as the grain must die to yield a harvest, so must the characters in the novel experience a form of death to their old selves to attain personal growth and spiritual awakening. As Robin Foyer Miller says, it is a book about damnation and salvation. Elder Zosima's later reference to this verse emphasizes the spiritual journey that many of the characters undertake. It's a call to humility, compassion, and a higher moral purpose. The struggle of the Karamazov brothers with their passions, intellect, and faith mirrors the death and rebirth depicted in the epigraph. Their transformation, Dmitri's atonement, Ivan's intellectual crisis, and Alyosha's spiritual blossoming, Grushenka's move to compassion, and more, echoes the eternal cycle of life, death, and resurrection. The epigraph transcends the confines of the novel, speaking to the human condition. It's a profound reminder that growth often comes through sacrifice, that in letting go of our old selves we may find a path to something richer and more meaningful. This profound metaphor forms the spiritual core of the novel, acting as a guiding light for both the characters within the story and the readers embarking on this literary journey. It's a timeless symbol of hope, redemption, and the transformative power of faith. Now over to Book 1 out of 12. Book 1 of The Brothers Karamazov, called A Nice Little Family, introduces the hedonistic father Fyodor, his three contrasting sons, Dmitri, Ivan, and Alyosha, the mothers, plus the elder Zosima. This opening sets the stage for a deep exploration of family dynamics and moral dilemmas. Please note that Book 1 is played out in the past, since it covers what has happened so far. And now we come to the summary slide of Book 1, Chapter 1, Fyodor Pavlovich Karamazov. Fyodor, a local landowner known for his sensuousness and muddle-headedness, collects his wealth through opportunistic dining at others' tables. He has the rank of a sponger. His marriage to Adelaida Ivanovna Musov, a beautiful aristocrat, stems from a desire for her generous wedding gift, while she seeks an exciting escape in Fyodor since she lacks mental freedom. The marriage soon descends into chaos, as Adelaida develops a deep contempt for Fyodor, often physically abusing him. Undiscouraged, Fyodor drains her finances and attempts to transfer her property to his name. When Adelaida escapes with a poor seminarian, she leaves her 3-year-old son Dmitri in Fyodor's care. Embracing his newfound freedom, Fyodor establishes a harem at home and indulges in heavy drinking, letting the servant Grigory take care of Dmitri. Despite his decadent lifestyle, Fyodor revels in playing the role of the wronged husband, lamenting Adelaida's abandonment to anyone willing to listen. His dramatic display suggests his enjoyment in gathering sympathy, and many found it disgraceful. Upon hearing about Adelaida's death from either typhus or starvation, while preparing to confront her, Fyodor exhibits a complex mix of jubilation and sorrow, reflecting his tangled emotions for his first wife. Let's read that section of the book. Karamazov was drunk when he learned of his wife's death, and some say he exclaimed joyfully, raising his hands to heaven, "Lord, now let your servant depart in peace." But, according to others, he wept, sobbing like a little boy, so that people felt sorry for him, despite the disgust he aroused in them. It is quite possible that they were all right, that he rejoiced in his regained freedom and wept for the woman from whom he had been freed, both at once. In most cases, people, even the most vicious, are much more naive and simple-minded than we assume them to be, and this is true of ourselves too. End quote. Now we reach the analysis of Book 1, Chapter 1, Fyodor Pavlovich Karamazov. The title of the book is A Nice Little Family, but as will immediately become apparent, the idyllic tone is, in fact, ironic. Already on the first pages, Fyodor is drunk, cheats his wives, and forgets his children. The author introduces Alexei as the main character, simultaneously highlighting the corrupt origins of the Karamazov's family wealth. As we will learn, it can be debated who is the main character, or if there are more than one. And not only Alyosha, the youngest child, and Fyodor, the father, are mentioned in Book 1. Many of the main characters appear here, and you might also say that Dmitri is the hero, since he is so prominent in Book 1 to 3, and later, a mix of thoughtful and mindless at the same time. Fyodor acquires his wealth through deceit, exploitation, and a loveless marriage to Adelaida, revealing his selfish nature and disregard for the concept of family. His characterization as a muddle-headed madcap and an unapologetic sensualist highlights his shameless nature, while his ability to marry two worthy women showcases the enigmatic Karamazov charisma. His actions also demonstrate how he corrupted the concept of family even before his children were born. Adelaida marries Fyodor to upset her family, realizing too late his true nature. She shows him to anger and frustrate her family by marrying someone from a lower class. Her violent and unhappy marriage, followed by her abandonment of Dmitri, likely shapes Dmitri's future character. Adelaida leaves Dmitri in Fyodor's care, thereby exposing him to his father's manipulative behaviors and risking the perpetuation of Fyodor's negative habits, allowing Fyodor to potentially shape the boy's character in his image. Starting harems in your house and totally neglecting your child is awful, of course. Fyodor enjoys manipulating public opinion, portraying himself as a wronged husband despite his indifference and infidelity. This reveals his enjoyment of playing roles for personal gain. The book states, in most cases people, even the most vicious, are much more naive and simple-minded than we assume them to be. But contrary to the narrator's claim of human naivety here, Karamazov's reaction to his wife's death showcases a contradictory and multifaceted emotional state. He seems to feel both joy at his newfound freedom and sorrow for the woman he has lost. This duality in his response is not necessarily a sign of deceit or manipulation, but reflects a deeper complexity in his character. His ability to simultaneously rejoice and mourn reveals a richness of emotion that goes beyond simple naivety, hinting at a more nuanced understanding of love, loss, and liberation. Here's the summary of Book 1, Chapter 2. He gets rid of his eldest son. Dmitri grows up neglected after Fyodor abandons him to the care of his servant, Grigory, simply forgetting about the boy, leading to Dmitri's erratic and wild lifestyle later. Fyodor's indifference contributes to his failed education and time in military school. Adelaida's cousin takes an interest in raising Dmitri, intervening in his upbringing. This is Pyotr Alexandrovich Musov. Fyodor's response suggests possible play acting or genuine ignorance of Dmitri's existence. Dmitri fails to complete high school, ends up in military school, leads a wild lifestyle in the Caucasus, and spends a lot of money, illustrating the consequence of his neglected upbringing. Dmitri returns to town to settle a dispute over inheritance money with Fyodor, emphasizing their strained relationship and setting the groundwork for future conflicts. Fyodor exploits Dmitri's nature, leading him to believe he might be indebted to his father, reflecting Fyodor's manipulative tendencies and paving the way for the catastrophe that forms the subject of the novel's first part. Dmitri's realization about possible indebtedness sets the stage for the novel's main conflict. And now to the analysis of Book 1, Chapter 2, he gets rid of his eldest son. Fyodor neglects his responsibilities as a father, reflecting his self-centered nature and lack of affection towards his children. His abandonment of Dmitri symbolizes a rotten fatherhood that foreshadows societal chaos. His indifference and possible play acting reveal his manipulative character, emphasizing his depravity. Fyodor's possible genuine forgetfulness or play acting, ignorance, about Dimitri's existence further unveils his manipulative nature. Themes of memory and forgetfulness start here and continue throughout the novel, influencing our perception of love and its sustaining power. Especially a focus on our positive memories from our childhood. Dimitri's entitlement contrasts with Fyodor's neglect, establishing him as a unique character among his brothers. This serves as a parallel to Elder Zosima, suggesting the impact of different circumstances on Dimitri's character development. Fyodor cleverly manipulates Dimitri, using his weaknesses to his advantage. This manipulation further emphasizes Fyodor's lack of paternal love and willingness to exploit others, culminating in an evil that will come back to haunt him. The conflict arising from the manipulation of Dimitri's inheritance by Fyodor foreshadows future struggles and tensions. The talk about the heritage and lack thereof triggers Dimitri's full panic and rage, spotlighting a very sensitive spot in the whole story. Pyotr Alexandrovich Musov is introduced, and as the Swedish author Erland Lagerroth says, Musov is a shallow representation of Western rationality. We will soon hear more from this most liberal man who almost stood at the barricades. This is the summary of Book 1, Chapter 3, The Second Marriage and the Second Family. Fyodor's marriage to Sofia Ivanovna, an orphan, and his engagement in orgies illustrate his unfaithfulness and disrespect. Sofia's struggle with hysteria, her motherhood, her death, and her past psychological abuse leave an impact on Ivan and Alexei. The widow intervenes upon discovering poor living conditions, slapping Fyodor and taking Ivan and Alexei under her care, securing their education. Yefim Petrovich ensures the boys' education and grows their inheritances, acting as their savior. Ivan's literary success and his move to mediate between Fyodor and Dimitri exhibits his maturity and responsibility. He stands on his own and is superior to many of the other students. And here is the analysis of Book 1, Chapter 3, The Second Marriage and the Second Family. Sofia's life of suffering and religious devotion influences Alexei to join the monastery and shapes Ivan's perspective on the prevalence of suffering in the world, questioning God's existence. Sofia's hysteria could be linked to an undiagnosed mental disorder. After being raised by a tormentor, this disorder has the worst soil to land in, given Fyodor's total neglect of her and the children. Fyodor tells us that those innocent eyes of hers slit my soul open like a razor, and this is a clear example of the leitmotif of sensuality. The widow's slap to both Fyodor and Grigory highlights her anger at their neglect and marks a turning point in Ivan and Alexei's upbringing. Her role, alone with Polenov as a surrogate parent, contrasts with Dimitri's upbringing, explaining some of the differences between the brothers. Ivan's belief regarding faith and obedience to the Orthodox Church reflects his ideas on maintaining social order rather than religious conviction. Ivan serves as a mediator between Fyodor and Dmitri, foreshadowing Alexei's later role. It also stands clear that Ivan is the intellectual of them all. He is also the detached one, the eyewitness, a person who refuses to live on other people's charity. Fyodor's connection with Ivan due to intellectual pursuit hints at hidden depths within his character, in contrast with his otherwise base and neglectful behavior. The irony that Fyodor likes to imagine himself as learned through his son adds another layer to his personality. As Victor Terras notes, Fyodor is a channel for slapstick throughout the novel. Here we see it in a sentence like, "As to the slaps he had received, he dashed all around the town, telling everyone about the incident himself." This is the summary of Book 1, Chapter 4, The Third Son, Alyosha. Alexei, or Alyosha, the youngest of the brothers, is a lover of mankind and finds his calling through elder Zosima, which leads him to choose the monastic life. Alexei's memory of his mother is that of a frenzied but beautiful woman. And he especially remembers his mother in the slanting rays on a quiet summer evening. Alyosha tolerates Fyodor's behaviors and never condemns him, which results in a sincere and deep love from Fyodor. Alexei becomes close to the family of Yefim Petrovich, who treat him as their own child. In school he is well loved, demonstrates modesty and chastity, and excels in his studies. Alexei has no awareness of the value of money and is unconcerned about who supports him. Pyotr Alexandrovich Musov jokes that Alexei would always find someone to care for him, even in an unknown big city. Fyodor returns from Odessa, looking older and more light-headed than usual, and is happy to make a fool of others if he can. Meanwhile, Alyosha's influence on him leads him to donate 1,000 rubles to the monastery in his first wife's name, not in Alyosha's mother's name. Despite his buffoonish behavior, Fyodor exhibits knowledge of literature hinting at Voltaire, while making fun of hell. Before completing his studies, Alexei decides to visit his father and finds his mother's grave. After locating the grave, he announces his intention to join the monastery and gains Fyodor's consent. Fyodor believes that Alexei will pray for sinners like him and eventually return to him after being cured. Zosima, the wise elder, sees Alyosha as spiritually gifted and takes him under his guidance. Elders in the Orthodox Christian tradition, like Zosima, are considered to have reached spiritual perfection, and Alyosha expects miracles from him. This is the analysis of Book 1, Chapter 4, The Third Son, Alyosha. Alexei's faith is an embodiment of innocence and purity, often likened to the archetype of God's fool, or Yurodevi in Russian tradition. This concept of a holy fool emphasizes his divine innocence, wisdom through simplicity, and ability to see truth where others are blinded by worldly concerns. It connects him deeply with the spiritual realm and his dear mother, and provides a unique perspective that influences those around him. Meanwhile, Alyosha is also described as health, strength, and handsomeness, telling us that he is much more than just a Yurodevi. Fyodor's relationship with Alexei evolves from mistrust to profound love, stemming from Alexei's acceptance and non-judgmental nature. This allows Fyodor to adjust his behavior, unlike with others, showing how Alyosha's kindness influences even the most stubborn characters. Their relationship reveals a surprising depth of knowledge and hints at the more complex personality in Fyodor. It underscores that he's not merely a distracted muddlehead, but has engaged with literature and philosophical ideas, further enriching the contrast between him and his spiritually inclined son. Alexei's warmth, humility, and lack of judgment draw people to him, including his own father. His positive influence extends beyond his family, reflecting his deep understanding of human nature and ability to forgive. His approach to life contrasts sharply with the negative traits inherited from his upbringing. Already as a child, he lived like a monk, never caring at whose expense he was living. Alexei's lack of concern about money, despite never experiencing poverty, highlights his focus on spiritual rather than material wealth. His disregard for financial matters contrasts significantly with the attitudes of Dmitri and Fyodor. Alexei's spiritual journey leads him to his mother's grave and away from conventional career paths. His quests for deeper meaning contrast sharply with Fyodor's selfish pursuits. Fyodor's inability to remember his wife correctly and reliance on a servant for further guidance emphasize his self-absorption. Alexei's, or Alyosha's, family members present formidable challenges to his spiritual path. With a father who is often drunk and prone to making a buffoon of others, an older, violent, militant brother, and another self-centered intellectual sibling, Alyosha faces a complex and daunting familiar landscape. These varied beliefs and behaviors within his family starkly contrast Alexei's spiritual pursuits, highlighting the obstacles he must navigate. The absence of a maternal figure adds to this complexity, emphasizing his isolation within his family and the arduous nature of his spiritual journey. This is the summary of Book 1, Chapter 5, Elders, the last chapter of Book 1. Alexei's healthy and clear-eyed entrance to the monastery reveals his realism, and his belief in miracles symbolizes his desire to connect with a higher truth. He attributes his willingness to enter the monastery to his mother, as shown in this quote. Or perhaps his decision was somehow connected with the slanting rays of the setting sun on the icon before which his crazy mother had held him. End quote. Alexei's potential childhood memories with his mother at the monastery and his meeting with the dying elder Zosima underline his spiritual connection and the uncertainty ahead. Elders in the monastery wield a spiritual influence, guiding disciples in self-conquest. Both nobility and commoners seek their wisdom, illustrating the broad-reaching respect. Zosima's love for Alexei Zosima's love for Alexei contrasts with the mixed reactions he receives from others, highlighting the complexities even within a spiritual community. Alexei's proposal for a family meeting in Zosima's cell signifies his effort to mend familiar bonds despite underlying conflicts and suspicions. Alexei's nuanced relationship with his brothers and his apprehensions about the meeting with Zosima emphasize his moral clarity and worries about potential disrespect to the elder. He notices that Ivan is somewhat of an enigma and that his two brothers are very different from each other. This is the analysis of Book 1, Chapter 5, Elders, and there's a lot to talk about here. Alexei's realistic views aligns with the belief that faith generates miracles, contrasting Ivan's skepticism and atheism. This balance between realism and faith showcases Alexei's spiritual growth. Additionally, his pursuit of self-mastery and inner freedom, summarized in the idea that one may achieve complete freedom through a whole life of obedience, adds depth to his spiritual journey and reflects the monastic values he embraces. The influence of his mother's memory motivates Alexei's choice to join the monastery, reflecting a spiritual continuation of his positive childhood experiences. This is a difference between Freud and Dostoevsky. While Freud focused on the negative things from our childhood, Dostoevsky focuses on the positive memories and how they can stay with us all of our lives. Like Alexei entering the monastery, also based on the slanting rays of the setting sun on the icon. Elders' spiritual purity, believed to grant clairvoyance, reflects the community's faith in them. Commitment between the elder and believer creates a profound spiritual connection. Zosima's love for Alexei's innocence and the diverse responses towards him show the human tendencies present even in a devoted religious environment. Alyosha's intuitive understanding reveals the contrasting characters of his brothers. Ivan's aloof, self-absorbed contemplation, and Dmitri's enthusiastic emotional connection. This insight underscores the complexity of family dynamics, with Ivan's isolated pursuit of inner goals and Dmitri's admiration of Ivan creating a rich yet divided familial landscape. Alyosha's discomfort around Ivan's potential contempt and his respect for both brothers further highlight the nuanced relationships within the family. The gathering in Zosima's cell highlights the conflicting motivators within the family, juxtaposing selfish desires with Alexei's hope for reconciliation. His concerns about his family's attitude towards the monastery and their potential failings underscore his understanding of their complexities and his desire for them to connect with Zosima's wisdom. When I went through the Berkeley course on the Brothers Karamazov, led by Hubert Dreyfus, I learned more about the purity that Ivan and Alyosha are looking for, but in a very different ways. Here we end up in the German words of Reinheit versus Lauterkeit. Ivan's quest for purity mirrors the Greek tradition of philosophical reasoning and a rational understanding of the world. His purity is a form of intellectual and moral cleanliness, a rejection of the chaos and imperfection of human existence. He is self-sufficient, manages his own life, and seeks autonomy from others. Being free means independence from external constraints, but also that you are left on your own. Alyosha's purity is rooted in faith, compassion, and an acceptance of human frailty. His path towards Lauterkeit is one of embracing and transcending the darkness in alignment with Judeo-Christian teachings on redemption and forgiveness. He is ready to give his soul to Zosima. Being free means freeing oneself from the constraints of one's own desires, but also that you follow what someone else tells you to do. The contrasting pursuits of purity in Ivan and Alyosha illustrates a profound philosophical dichotomy present in the Brothers Karamazov. These differing paths shed light on the novel's exploration of human nature ethics and the ongoing struggle between reason and faith. Both brothers seek purity, but their methods and underlying philosophies set them on distinct paths, enriching the novel's thematic complexity. For each book, I will add 2 slides with themes taken from the 5 major themes. So let's dive into book 1 and theme 1. That's family dynamics, relationships, and the influence of inheritance. I will let you read this. This quote highlights the contradictory nature of Fyodor Pavlovich, portraying his reaction to his wife's death as both ecstatic and pitiful. This duality underscores his complex and erratic character and may symbolize the tension between appearance and reality within family relationships. The differing accounts of Fyodor's reaction also hint at societal judgments and hypocrisy, while the biblical reference adds religious undertones, linking to the novel's themes of faith and morality. Overall, the passage serves as an introduction to the multifaceted exploration of human emotions, relationships, and ethical complexities that permeate Dostoevsky's work. Now over to Book 1 and Theme 2, Morality, Ethics, and the Search for Truth and Justice. I will let you read this and then I will comment. This quote illustrates Fyodor Pavlovich's profound moral failure as a father. His complete abandonment of his child, not out of malice, but simply due to forgetfulness, reflects a concerning absence of ethical responsibility. Fyodor's detachment is presented as both a personal flaw and a symptom of a broader societal issue. Dostoevsky uses this stark portrayal to challenge readers to consider the nature of morality and responsibility, not just within the confines of family, but in the larger context of human conduct and values. It's a telling moment that resonates with the novel's themes of truth, justice, and the complexities of the human connection. For each book in the Brothers Karamazov, I have added 2 slides at the end. One is, what would the existentialist say? Since Fyodor Dostoevsky is portrayed as one of the starters of the existentialist movement, even if he didn't define himself that way, it's important, I think, to see what would people in the early 1900s and mid-1900s maybe say about Book 1. Of course, they haven't said this themselves, I'm making it up, but it's a way of trying to understand the complexities of this book through the eyes of existentialist thinkers. Let's see. And it's a figure embodying reckless individualism. Fyodor Karamazov captures the existentialist theme of personal freedom and its potential misuse. His selfish existence, similar to Sartre's idea of bad faith, is defined by his refusal to accept responsibility for his actions. He can be seen as an embodiment of Kierkegaard's aesthetic stage of existence, dominated by sensual indulgence and refusal to commit to meaningful relationships. Dmitri's impulsive, passion-driven life, filled with duels, promotions, and debts, mirrors the existentialist's confrontation with the absurdity of life. Similar to Albert Camus' concept of the rebel, Dmitri's tempestuous character embodies a revolt against an unjust world and his father's betrayal, seeking authenticity and freedom in his own terms. Ivan's character echoes Nietzsche's Übermensch, living a life driven by intellect and individual will. His self-made success and introspective nature exhibit the existential emphasis on the individual's power and isolation in a meaningless universe. His intellect puts him at odds with his family, showing Sartre's existential concept of otherness. Alyosha's spiritual journey aligns with Kierkegaard's religious stage of existence, where one surrenders to this transcendent reality beyond the observable world. His faith in miracles alongside his realism embodies the existential paradox of simultaneously acknowledging life's absurdity and seeking meaning. The family reunion and the upcoming meeting with Father Zosima set the stage for a clash of the brothers' distinct existential paths. This mirrors the existential conflict of navigating individual freedom and authenticity amidst social and familial expectations, demonstrating Heidegger's being with, the tension of being an individual in a world of others. Simone de Beauvoir's concept of the other is exemplified in the women's characters and their roles in the Karamazov family. Adelaida and Sophia, both Fyodor's wives, are treated as secondary, existing merely to serve and satisfy the men's desires, echoing Beauvoir's assertion of women being made the other in a patriarchal society. Their absence in the present narrative, yet profound impact on the brothers, underscores their oppression and marginalization. Furthermore, the dominant narrative of male existential struggle might be critically viewed as a perpetuation of patriarchal norms, ignoring the existential crisis faced by women, an area de Beauvoir prominently highlighted. Professor John Vervaeke has an excellent course called Awakening from the Meaning Crisis. You can look it up online. I have been inspired by that to see how we can understand the Brothers Karamazov in a current psychological landscape. So, let's see if I adopt Vervaeke's thinking on book 1 to see where we land. This is, of course, not John Vervaeke's comments, it's mine. So don't hold him responsible for this. Let's dive in. Ivan Karamazov's deep immersion in intellectual pursuits is a testament to the flow state, where full engagement and acute focus drive his scholarly success. Contrastingly, Dimitri's impulsiveness symbolizes an acute scaling down of attention to immediate stimuli. Alyosha's spiritual journey depicts the scaling up, with an attention towards existential patterns echoing the concept of attentional processing. Alyosha's spiritual transcendence under the guidance of Father Zosima mirrors Plato's allegory of the cave. His escape from the shadowy realm of family conflicts toward a spiritual reality is paralleled in his decision to follow Zosima, illustrating a striving for higher states of consciousness. Fyodor Karamazov embodies the concept of the agent in the arena, where his chaotic existence shapes his son's individual journeys. His relationships and actions create a distinct worldview that heavily influences his children's understanding and interaction with their environments. Father Zosima symbolizes the attainment of higher states of consciousness, as evidenced by his saint-like status and the deep reverence Alyosha shows towards him. His character serves as an ideal for Alyosha, who desires the psychological transformation this higher state offers. Each son's unique reaction to their father's existential nihilism showcases how familiar influence impacts personal development. Dimitri's impulsive desire for immediate gratification, Ivan's intellectual pursuits and Alyosha's spiritual journey are distinct paths carved under the same legacy. The complex character arcs of the Karamazov brothers exemplify the struggle for personal meaning amidst the existential crisis. Their individual journeys underscore different approaches to this universal quest, highlighting the influence of inherited traits, personal beliefs, and societal expectations. At the end of each book, and this is the last slide, I add some questions for you to ponder. I will not discuss them now, of course, but please read through them and reflect on them, since you might learn something about yourself and the Brothers Karamazov by going through them.